folks, welcome back to the Broken Meeple, and it's time for a how to play video. It's been a while since I've done any of these, and I apologise for that in advance. But I'm going to be doing more of these now. I want to focus a bit less on the unboxing videos and more on the how to plays and the actual reviews. So you should be seeing more of these how to play videos coming out in the future months. For now though, we're going to start with a co-op game, one of my favourite co-op games in my collection. And that is Sentinels of the Multiverse. The card game. Yeah, the card game, kind of obvious. Sentinels of the Multiverse is a superhero co-op done in the theme of comic book style heroes. And it's where each player takes control of their own deck, their own hero, and goes up against a villain in a particular environment. And each hero is playing cards using special powers to take out the villain whilst surviving the wrath that the villain shoves at them, as well as any dangers that the environment decides to throw in your way, and sometimes the villains, and during the course of the game. Each player takes control of their own hero, and I'm going to just try and zoom into a couple to see if I can help you focus in more on these. So over here we have Tempest. Tempest is effectively a kind of sort of alien slash merman type creature. I mean, it's quite hard to tell. He's called the Inhuman Tempest, which is probably not too far off a description for him really. But he is known for zapping people with lightning, doing multi sort of area of effect attacks, hitting multiple people at the same time, spot of healing, that kind of thing. Relatively easy to use, but he's quite a cool character and very useful in a starting game. Over here we have the Wraith. Now the Wraith is kind of the parody of Batman, except in this story she is female, and instead of wrapped up in the bat costume, she's wrapped up in mostly bandages. Now Wraith is the sort of person who goes around with a ton of sort of like utility belt style items. So she's got the utility belt itself and has all these little cool gadgets to either mess around with the villain deck, reduce damage effectively. Rather than deal out tons of damage by herself, she can do lots of really cool little support powers and keep everyone alive, which is, she's a very good character as well. And up here we have Legacy, and I think you can tell already this is effectively the parody of Superman. Legacy doesn't really go out dealing lots of damage by himself. Legacy is more of a support character, bolstering his allies, either taking hits for them, or reducing the damage they take, or even better, increasing the damage that they deal. That tends to be quite a good thing to use with Legacy. All three of these characters are generally quite simple. There's a difficulty rating for all the heroes in this game, from 1 to 3 in terms of how complex they are to use. Tempest, Wraith and Legacy are all level 1 characters, so they are brilliant for a starting game. However, we also need the environment and the villain. So over here, we have, come on, there we go. We have the villainous Baron Blade. He is a level 1 villain and recommended as the starting villain for new players to the game. Baron Blade is effectively your mad scientist stereotype, but he's a major staple in the background for this game. And yes, I mean, this is done in a comic book style. There is all sorts of really cool background fluff on all the characters, possibly even the environments. So, no, maybe not the environments, but certainly the characters and the villains have all got their own backstory. They all interlink. Some of them are nemesis of each other, which is really cool. And there's a really good storyline with half of these characters. I mean, they've been well thought out. But anyway, I'm divulging. But here is his own deck, which you will use to play out what the villain does to the heroes. And I will stress straight away that normally with each deck, you get 2 small cards. So if I just go around here, you can see, there you go, you normally get 2 small cards, one with his picture and one with the various text, and then you can flip them to an alternative part that happens midway during the game. These oversized villain cards are not in the base set box. They are bought as an additional purchase to pimp up your game. I highly recommend them though. They're very good quality, they've got great artwork. It's easier than using two separate cards, and you can buy I think about 21 oversized cards, i.e. covering all the villains in the first load of expansions for about a tenner. So they're really worth it, and I recommend you do it. But I'm using it here because hopefully it will be easier for you guys to see what's going on. And then finally we need an environment. So pan around over here. We have the the ruins of Atlantis. Effectively, well, what do you think Atlantis is? We're talking underwater city. I've not actually used this deck before because bearing in mind there are quite a lot of heroes and villains and environments, and I have not had a chance to test every single one out. But the ruins of Atlantis is one of the starting locations, and I think it would be pretty cool to test it out here. Probably Tempest will feel right at home here, given that he's a bit of a merman water thing, but we'll see whether that plays into the game. Okay, first we're going to deal with the initial setup. Now, bearing in mind I am staring at my camera with the view screen reversed, and this is the first time I've done a how to play with this new software, so hopefully you won't get motion sickness on the camera, hopefully I won't be messing this up. So feel free to give me your comments and feedback when discussing this later, but hopefully I'll do a pretty good job for my first try. Now, to start off, you have setup. Each player chooses a hero, and here we already have Tempest, we have the Wraith, and we have Legacy. Now, you don't have to set them up in this kind of sort of curved fashion I've done here. Normally I would have sort of 1, 2, 3, 4 heroes in a line, and if you're playing with your friends in a group game, then you would be sat around a table and you would just have them like that, and maybe have the the villain environment in the center. But so I can get them on the same camera lens, I'm doing it in this fashion, and I'm only using 3 heroes. I prefer to play this game with 4. 3 tends to make it a little bit more tougher, but it's a good challenge. I mean, this game is a pretty challenging game in itself. Never underestimate the villains, even the easy ones, because, something can happen that could drastically affect the game. But that's what I love about this game. It's fun and it's challenging. You can check out my review of this on YouTube already, as well as future reviews on the expansions when I get around to doing those. But for now, let's get on with the setup. So as I said, you've got 3 heroes. Each has their own deck, and before the game starts, each player will draw 4 cards from their deck to use as their hand. I'm just going to draw 4 for each, and then I'm going to place them just nearby so that I can reach for them later. Obviously, I don't have some friends right now to hold these cards for me. Now every villain has specific setup guidelines for what you have to do with their cards. So some of them will say flip to a particular side, some will say deal some heroes damage maybe. Most of them tend to say draw cards from the villain deck or take something out of the villain deck. Now with this guy, you can probably see that it requests you to take out the mobile defense platform straight from the deck. So I have already gone through the deck, which is here, and taken out the mobile defense platform. Oop, there go the HP tokens. So as you can see, there is the mobile defense platform. It has 10 HP, which is that number in the top corner, and it is a device, and it has a special effect as well as some fluff text at the bottom of the card. Now the text for this one, in case that's not clear to you, is that Baron Blade is immune to damage. This is effectively the thing that he flies around on at the start of the game, ignoring all damage, which means that the hero's first point of call is to take it out. This is what Baron Blade likes to do. He's a bit like the Wraith, the anti-Wraith. He has these various equipment cards that like to screw over the opposing players. But he's a pretty cool villain, and you do see him coming back every now and again, especially in the newest expansion, Vengeance, when he even brings his whole team. But more on that another time. So, to get started with the game, the environment, there is nothing that happens with the environment. That just happens on the end of each round. For now, there is no setup required. So first off, the villain gets their turn. At the start of the villain turn, any effects that the villain does to various characters or heroes from their cards will go off. At the moment, we haven't got any because nothing's happened yet. Then, you play the top card from the villain deck. And depending on what it is, you read out the text, play it in front, do damage. It might be there's various types of cards, to put it in one way. There's one-shot cards, which mean that you simply just do the effect and that's done, it's discarded. You've got ongoing cards, which sit out in play and remain there until someone gets rid of them. And similar to ongoing cards, you have devices, equipment, various other terminology comes up during other heroes and villains, but they're cards that basically remain in play and may be targeted by specific cards. Now in this case, we have drawn the Elemental Redistributor. So as you can go there, this is another card that has hit points, so it's something else that needs to be taken out. Whenever Baron Blade would be dealt fire, cold or lightning damage, redirect that damage to the hero target with the lowest HP. So hopefully you can see what I'm getting at there. Hopefully that's gone well. But effectively, that means that whenever somebody deals him specific damage, that damage is going to get redirected. Now this is going to be a problem. Nobody here deals fire damage. Nobody here really does cold damage. However, Tempest down here is a good one with lightning. So suddenly the Tempest has a bit of a problem and is going to want to take that out pretty soon. But you play it out in front and place hit point tokens on the card to represent how many hit points it has. Now some people with this game do claim that it's a bit fiddly with all these tokens. I will stress now that I'm only using the tokens here to illustrate how the game runs for you. But there is, if you have iOS and possibly even Android now, they have an app called the Sentinels Psychic app. It allows you to track status effects and hit point tokens across everything, including villains, heroes and environments. It's very useful. I recommend you get it if you have this game and have a tablet handy to use with it. Even just an iPhone would do really, but if you've got an iPad, even better. I use it on mine and it's invaluable, but I'm digressing. So we've played the card and then you end the villain turn. The villain turn, any effects that happen at the end of the villain turn will go off. Now at the moment we don't have any cards that are dealing damage from the villain, and the villain himself does not have an effect that says at the end of the turn do damage. So at the moment the heroes have got away with a nice clean villain turn. We then move on to each of the heroes in turn. We're going to go Legacy, Wraith and then Tempest. They play in a similar fashion to the villain. First off, you have your hand, so you will look at the 4 cards that you have here and decide what you want to do. You then play a hero card, so you play 1 card from your hand. You don't have to, but this is the time when you have to do it. After you have done this, you may use a power, which is 1. There is 1 on your hero. If I bring that up, you'll be able to see Legacy's one. There you go. So he has the power of bolstering the damage to allies. But you will also get powers from various cards that you play. So there's always that. After that, you will, first off, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's go with playing a hero card. So I shall look through these 4 cards here that I have. And I think one of the first things we need to do is take out the mobile defense platform. This is a given. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a 1-shot card, Back Fist Strike. Here we go, Back Fist Strike. This allows him to do 4 melee damage to the target. Now target basically just means anything with hit points or anything that the card specifically targets. So we discard that. That's all done. It's played from his hand and we deal 4 damage to the mobile defense platform, taking it down to 6. After this, Legacy can now use a power. Now he has no cards out, so the only one he can use is the power on his own character card. As stated, until the start of his next turn, increases damage by other heroes by 1. So we take status tokens, which are these little things. They've got various things like immune to damage, damage +1, damage -1, that kind of thing. And we place them on each hero to represent that's what's happening. Again, if you've got the app, you can track these with the app. And to be honest, if you're playing a solo game or if you've got gamers playing this rather than casual gamers, chances are they can remember what sort of things they have. So this isn't essential, but I'm just showing you so you can keep up with this video. So now, after playing a card and a power, you then draw a card from the deck, add it to your hand, and the go is over. Obviously, at the start or end of these turns, if you have any cards in play that activate as a result of these places, so at the start of the hero turn do this, for example, then those will go off as and when. But for now, we then move on to the Wraith. Wraith takes her 4 cards and has a few little tricks up her sleeve. Now, what Wraith is going to do is, let's see, she could do a bit of damage, she could protect herself from damage, or she could try and draw some cards. Nope. What Wraith is going to do is choose to prepare for later. She's going to whip out one of her nice juicy bits of equipment. I believe that's it. Yep, the micro targeting computer. When it says limited, it means you can only have one of these out in play. And the good thing too, because this would be overpowered otherwise. All future damage by the Wraith, that is projectile damage, is increased by 2. It's a nifty little card, nothing wrong with it, it's very handy, so she's preparing to dish out some damage in the long term. Now, her power, used on her card, if I get it for you, the Wraith. The Wraith's special little ability is that she can reduce the damage on the next attack done to her by 2. So, she's effectively able to protect herself in the long run. So she's going to do that. She's going to take 2 of these markers, 1 for each because there's a damage -1, damage -1. And so it means that if anything happens on the villain turn, on the environment turn to deal damage to her, suddenly she can now resist it more. So that's always good. She will then draw a card. And then that's the Wraith's turn over. We move on to Tempest. Rinse and repeat. You can see where this is going. So I look at Tempest cards. Now looking at what he's got mostly one-shot cards in his hand, mostly to deal damage. Now he has a problem that he does lightning damage mainly, and this little device here, it means that if he ever deals any damage to Baron directly, then it's going to get redirected to heroes. At the moment though, that's not a problem because what they're trying to do is take out this thing. So he can play a lightning card if he wants. Now what he could do is deal lots of damage to one, or he could do multiple things damage, or he could just prepare for later on. What he is going to choose to do though is, I believe he will... Ooh, it's a tough call actually. What will you do, Mr. Tempest? Tempest is going to again prepare for the future. So he's going to play one of his ongoing limited cards, which means that at the start, let's see if we can get that there. Electrical Storm. At the start of his turns, he will now do 1 damage to every non-hero target. This is a very nice perpetual damage that's going to be in constant use all the time. So he's going to play that. He then has 1 power that he can use on his card, which for the Tempest is to deal all non-hero targets 1 projectile damage. Now he doesn't get the bonus from Wraith's projectile thing, that's purely for Wraith. However, Legacy is bolstering him at the moment, so he will get an extra damage from that. So now he'll deal 2 damage to multiple targets, which is pretty good. Now Baron is immune to damage because of his mobile defense platform, so he won't get any on him. But he will deal 2 damage to each of his devices. So he's going to do that. Bang! That goes down to 4 HP. Boom, boom, boom. And this little elemental redistributor, weird name, also gets 2 HP knocked off it. So at the moment they're not doing a huge amount of damage, but they're preparing. They're getting ready for what is to come. Now that's all the hero turns over. After that we now have to look at the environment turn. The environment is basically the location that all this is taking place in. For whatever reason, Baron happens to be doing something in the ruins of Atlantis, and all the heroes are here to try and stop him. Now the environment plays in very much a similar way to the villain. You go through any effects that happen at the start of a turn, and then you just draw the top card. There's not many cards in the environment deck because obviously only 1 happens in a round, but I have yet to see a game where I've gone through the whole deck. So you're going to get some good variety here. So I take the top card, Toxic Seaweed. Whenever a hero uses a power, deal the hero H-1 toxic damage. Now, when I say H, you can see here, there is a, there you go, there is a H symbol there. This is something that was put into the enhanced edition of the game, which means H just stands for number of heroes. So there are 3 heroes playing, so H means 3. So what this is basically saying is whenever a hero uses a power, the hero is dealt 3-1 toxic damage. Ow, not good. At the end of the environment turn, one player may discard their hand to destroy this card. That is the additional effect. Let's see if I can focus on that on the bottom of the card. So this is a very nasty environment card. However, if someone is willing to sacrifice their hand, they can get rid of it. This is where the co-op theme of this game comes in, because you are going to have to work together. Some people are going to have to take hits in order to get by. But you play the card, and then if any effects happen at the end of the environment turn, they go off. But in this case, there is one effect that can go off. At the end of the environment turn, one player may discard their hand to discard this card. So the players look at their hands and have to decide between them if anybody is going to do this. Now, getting dealt 2 damage every round, that's annoying, especially when everyone's going to use a power on this turn. So they might decide that I think this is worth doing. So each one will look at their hand and decide whether they wish to get rid of a particular card or a particular hand. Now, looking at what there is, I think that in the end, I think the Wraith has decided that he could just destroy up to environment cards in his turn now. They are deciding not to do this. Tempest has a card in his hand that allows him to destroy up to 2 environment cards. So rather than get rid of a whole hand, he's just going to wait till then and dish out the damage. So at the moment, the heroes are going to have to just take the damage as they go. It's a bit of a sacrifice, but at least they'll be able to get rid of it eventually. And that ends a typical round of Sentinels in the Multiverse. The villain has his turn, the heroes have their turn in sequence, and then the environment has its turn. You then move on to the next round, and it happens in the same order. So now we move on to round 2. Again, we go back to the villain. If anything happens at the start of his turn, the effects go off. In this case though, there's nothing. These two just affect how the heroes interact with the villain. So we first take the top card of the villain deck. Reading it, it's an ongoing card, Living Force Field. Reduce the damage dealt to Baron Blade by 1. So as you can see, there is a sort of continuing theme that there are these really annoying devices that are going to get in the way. Now this differs from these two because this isn't a device, it's an ongoing card. So it remains in play, but it doesn't have hit points, which means that someone is going to have to discard something in order to get rid of that. It's a pain. It means that Baron, even though he only has 40 hit points, is a bit of a tough nut. So at the end of the villain turn, there is nothing here that deals damage. So again, the heroes have got off scot-free. Bear in mind, Baron Blade is one of the easier villains. You know, some other villains will literally, from the word go, be smacking you in the face. So there are a lot of differences between these villains. Baron Blade is effectively trying to turtle this game rather than dish out all the damage, because if I show you his card, you will notice that there is, let's see if I can get this to there, yes, you can see that there is an end game condition under gameplay where if there are 15 or more cards in the villain trash, then basically his nasty device, laser, magnet, magnetron, whatever you want to call it, goes off and pulls the moon into the earth, effectively killing everybody. Game over. That is effectively what Baron Blade is trying to do in this game. So he wants to turtle, he wants to sit in his little platform in the ruins of Atlantis and basically get his laser running. He doesn't care about dishing the damage, because in the end, he just wants to destroy the world. He is in that case, as you can tell. So now we go back to the heroes. Legacy. Legacy kicks off, we get back his cards, and have a look at what he has. Now, he has 2 cards that are duplicated, which will increase his damage. He's not too fussed about that. He can get people to draw a card, so that's not too bad. Or he can play a card which allows him to use a power for getting healing heroes and dealing damage to villains. Now, because they are about to take a little bit of damage from those really annoying toxic seaweed card, he is deciding that he's going to use Motivational Charge. Motivational Charge is an ongoing limited card that allows every hero to regain 1 HP and lets him deal 2 damage when used as a power. It's quite a nifty little card, so he's going to use it. We're going to place it down there. Obviously, like I say, you would have heroes lined up in a row, and it wouldn't get quite as crowded as this, but I'm trying to fit everything into the same screen, so hopefully, your games will be neater than this one. Mine are, 1, 2, 3, 4, and hero villain, so they're very nice and neat. I can tell exactly what's going on. Now we get back to, first, draw a card. You do have an option in this game where if you do not use a power or play a card, you can draw 2 cards at the end of your turn. You don't tend to do this very often, but if you're drained of your hand for, let's say, Toxic Seaweed and various other types of cards, you may decide that you just want to sit back and get some more cards, because in the end, if you don't have stuff in play and you run out of cards in your hand, you're not really contributing much to the team. So now we move on to the Wraith. Pick up Wraith's cards. Here we go. Now these wear off. Or does it? No, it does not. My mistake. I stand corrected. It reduces the next damage that would be dealt to the Wraith by 2. Nothing has happened to deal damage to the Wraith yet, so it still stays. I've gone ahead of myself. I'm very sorry. Legacy has yet to use a power on his turn. So Legacy is going to use the motivational charge that he played. Now by doing so, he has to deal himself 2 damage because of the Toxic Seaweed that I mentioned earlier. So his hit points are here. He normally starts with 32, he deals himself 2 damage, but gets to use his power. Each hero is able to regain 1 HP. The other heroes have not lost any HP, it's only him, so he can have his back. And he then gets to deal a 2 melee damage attack to anything he feels like. He thinks it's about time that mobile defense platform got knocked out, so he's going to knock it down for another 2. I apologise for not doing that on his turn, my bad. Back to the Wraith. Now, these effects go away because the Legacy did not use his personal power of bolstering damage of allies. So we take those away so they're not in effect. The Wraith now gets her hand and has a look. Now the Wraith can destroy an ongoing or environment card. It can also jab the villain, making that sure he can't deal damage next turn. She can do damage back to the villain when she is dealt damage, or she can draw a card and get some equipment out of her deck. Now at the moment, she's not doing too bad on the equipment front. She has got the projectile damage there, however she doesn't have anything in her hand that actually deals projectile damage, which can be a bit of annoyance. Now what I think the Wraith will decide to do is she could take out the ongoing card here. She has a card to do that. Problem is that the best thing to do? Should they now actually start focusing on getting rid of that? It's hard to tell. I mean, you can never really tell what you're going to use. So I think what the Wraith is going to do is, let's see, I believe she will play Impromptu Invention. That's her choice. She gets to draw a card, she also gets to play a card, but she also gets to look through her deck and find an equipment card and either put it into play or shuffle the deck. It's a very useful card, one of the best ones in the Wraith deck. Wraith goes through her deck and searches for an equipment card that she thinks she'll need. Now, considering we can up her projectile damage, I think it's about time we actually got her a piece of equipment that actually dealt projectile damage. So, let's see, we're gonna... There's several to choose from. You've always got some cool stuff that you can do. She can do multiple targets damage, or she can just deal heavy damage to one thing. I think the Wraith is going to opt for mass damage to one target. So she's going to go for Razor Ordnance. Shuffle the deck. Whoops. Without dropping the cards everywhere. Nope. And then Razor Ordnance. As a power, she can deal the target 3 projectile damage. Except now we have the micro-targeting computer in place, so that becomes 5. So this is powerful. Very powerful indeed. Now that was just playing a card. She can also play a card. She also draws a card from the Impromptu Invention, adds it to her hand, and the Impromptu Invention also allows her to play an additional card. So on this occasion, she is going to play the Grappling Hook. Just show you what that does. Destroy an ongoing or environment card, you may draw a card. It's a very nifty little one-shot card. So she plays it, draws a card, adds it to her hand. Now she has a choice. Take out the toxic seaweed, that's making her deal, that's dishing damage every time someone uses a power, or the living force field. Which one do you do? Now, at the moment, Tempest could take out that, but he's able to take out 2 with his card. It seems like a waste. So, having -1 damage is a pain, yes. However, we reckon that it's about time that Tempest actually started dealing some major damage. So she is choosing to take out the toxic seaweed. Goes away, discard pile, it's no longer in play. Well done, Wraith. Wraith still hasn't used her power yet. So Wraith now chooses, instead of using the damage -1, she's going to use the Razor Ordnance power and deal 5 damage to something. Now, in this case, she could take out the mobile defense platform, but there's only got 2 HP left. Seems like a bit of a waste of 3 damage there. This still has 8, and it's a pain for Tempest. So she's choosing to take 5 HP off the elemental redistributor. Put her hit points back. Normally the toxic seaweed would have dealt damage, but it's not in play, and this still remains because nothing has dealt damage to her yet. So that is the Wraith's turn. Draw a card. As you can see, Wraith's very good at drawing cards, so she can have a nice big hand, and there is no hand size limit. You can have all the cards you want in your hand, so there's never a bad thing about drawing cards. We now move on to the Tempest. Tempest, here we go again. So we look at Tempest cards. Now his card to destroy environment cards is now relatively worthless. We don't really need that now. So he has 2 cards available. Deal 1 target lots of damage, or deal multiple targets bits of damage. At the moment, there's still 3 things that need dying here. We've got the mobile defense platform, we have the elemental redistributor, and we have Baron Blade himself once that's gone. So we need something that deals multiple damage. However, before we even get onto that, we have this. Need we forget? This card at the start of his turn allows him to deal each non-hero target 1 lightning damage. So, before anything's even kicked off, 1, 2, and nothing on him because he's currently immune. Very nice. Now, he's going to decide to take out multiple things. So, his chosen card to play is the... Ooh. Interesting. He could instead, actually... if he doesn't play a card now, he won't be able to play a card after using his power. So he's going to use Chain Lightning. Deal 1 target 4 damage, deal another 3, and deal another 2. It's effectively forked lightning. Plays the card, put it in here, which is his trash pile. He's going to decide to distribute the damage as such. 4 damage to the elemental redistributor. It's a waste of 2 damage, but at least it takes it out. So 2 is taken off, bang, donk. Now, you're thinking, well, hang on a minute. Earlier on, you said that if Baron Blade gets 15 cards in the trash pile, he wins the game. So surely we want to leave these out. Well, yes, to a point. But then if they're hindering your ability to kill Baron Blade, you're going to have to take him out at some point. And obviously, the less devices that Baron Blade has out in play, the weaker he is, so you can start nailing him as soon as they're taken out. 3 damage is then dealt to the mobile defense platform. Again, a waste of 2 damage, but needs must. Bang! Now we can start nailing on him. His final 2 damage is dealt to Baron Blade. However, he still has his living force field out, which means it's reduced to 1. So it's only 1 damage, but every little helps. He's now down to 39 hit points. Tempest still hasn't used his actual special ability though. Tempest allows him to deal 1 lightning damage to every non-hero target. Unfortunately, because he has his living force field out, that would just get reduced to 0 and Baron Blade would laugh in his face. How dare he? So the Tempest has nothing more to do but concede his turn after drawing a card and adding it to his hand. And then we move on to the environment turn. The environment gets its 2nd turn. Draw a card, and we have the Leaking Room. Well, if you are in the ruins of Atlantis, you're going to have to put up with this sort of thing. Players cannot play hero cards and increase all lightning damage by 2. At the start of the environment turn, destroy this card. Most environment cards have this type of timer on them where they last for an entire round, and then when it gets back to the environment turn, they go out of play or they're discarded, that kind of thing. So just to show you the card itself, leaking room, if it will focus on that. Come on. Sorry, this is having trouble focusing there. There we go. So as you can see, people cannot play cards, but lightning damage is increased by 2. So Tempest is going to have a pretty good go next round when he decides to lay out some lightning damage. Unfortunately, nobody can play hero cards, which is a bit of a problem when everybody actually needs to play a card. So we need some way to get rid of that. Unfortunately, the main person who has anything left to get rid of environment cards is effectively Tempest and Wraith. Poor Legacy might not be able to do very much on his turn at this rate. It's a bit of a shame, but that's the way things go. You can't expect things to go your way every time. The environment gets in the way, the villain will do stuff to hinder you, and obviously you're limited by what cards in your hand. That's where the challenge lies. So that's a general run through of how to play Sentinels on the Multiverse. I could go through more rounds to show you what happens, but they play out in much the same way as the 2 rounds I have just shown you. We start off with the villain deck, then we start off with the first hero, second hero, third hero, fourth and fifth if you've got those many heroes in play, and then the environment. This chain of events rinses and repeats as you go around until eventually one of 2 things happen. The villain is reduced to 0 hit points, or every hero is reduced to 0 hit points. Now, the villain will have a trigger on them that usually means that when they get to a certain amount of hit points or when something happens, their card flips. In Baron Blade's case, he will flip as soon as he gets reduced to 0 hit points, and then when he does, he basically heals himself, but then ends up with a bit more of a damaging flair to him, so he turns effectively into this and starts dealing damage. So there's always a bad side to an even more bad side to a villain. Now heroes, if I just take legacies here, when they die, they flip over and they end up incapacitated. And they have some really cool artwork for this game in general, but I really like the incapacitated ones. They really do look dark and gritty. Now, when that happens, they have 3 powers that are available to them on their turn. They can use one of those powers only, but they can choose which one to do. So they're not completely out of the game, they're still useful, and believe me, you do not want to underestimate these powers. They have saved my bacon on numerous occasions. But once all 3 heroes are incapacitated, that's it, game over, villain wins. So that's how to play Sentinels in the Multiverse. I hope this video has been useful. I hope it's given you some idea of how the game functions. I'm telling you now though that if you haven't seen my review, go and watch it. But I love this game. This is easily one of my favourite co-ops of all time. It started off a little slow for me as I was getting used to it, but after playing it for the last 2 months, it's really shooting up in the charts for me. It's easily is in my top 5 co-ops now. It's just been so much fun. There's so much variety with the expansions. You've got umpteen amount of heroes, environments and villains to choose from, and all games play very differently. I recommend you get this game. Hopefully this has helped. So that's it from me, and I'll see you next time on Broken Meeple. Goodbye.